Before Theft of Swords, Rise of Empire, and Heir of Novron, there was just Hadrian Blackwater, a disillusioned warrior returned from Callus, and Royce Melbourne, a cynical thief that will cut an inch off every straw to make the world suck a little less. Promises and debts will bring them together, and infamy will stitch their names into the tapestry of history. This is the backdrop of Michael J. Sullivan's Riyria Chronicles. Unlike my prior reviews, this series is not yet complete. As of today, there have only been 5 published books, and they are The Crown Tower, The Rose and the Thorn, The Death of Dulgath, The Disappearance of Winter's Daughter, and Drummondor. Before I get into the review, let me explain how I actually do reviews. Personally, I'm not a fan of a single rating for an entire series or book. Many books and series have strengths and weaknesses that a single score doesn't properly reflect. So for my reviews, I use a 5-star rating system, with the 5 being the highest, over 6 categories, and they are plot, world building, characters, magic system, writing, and enjoyment. But before I begin, these videos do take a lot of time to put together, so if you like the video, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Category 1. The plot. So what is the Riyria Chronicles, and how does it relate to the Riyria Revelations trilogy? Well, the answer is quite simple. It's a prequel series. Where the Riyria Revelations introduces us to Hadrian Blackwater and Royce Melbourne as an efficient duo, the Riyria Chronicles shows us that efficiency takes trial and error. A lot of trial and error. The first book in this series is called The Crown Tower. If you read the Riyria Revelations, you may have an idea what this book is about, but if not, that's where I come in. The Crown Tower starts off by introducing us to Hadrian Blackwater. He's returned from Callus, and he's not in the best of places. A master swordsman, he has just spent the last few years of his life putting his skills to use by killing both people and animals. Disappointed by his actions, he returns to Avran, looking for a new start. But first, he needs to go to Sheridan University to meet with Professor Arcadius and receive his inheritance regarding his father's debt. It is at Sheridan University that we are officially introduced to Royce Melbourne, and the two really don't see eye to eye on account of a little thing called murder. Look, people, it's a spoiler-free review. Anyway, Arcadius convinces Roy and Hadrian to do a job together. And what does his job entail, you ask? Well, it's all in the name of the book. He wants Royce and Hadrian to scale the Crown Tower and steal Edmund Hall's journal. Sounds simple enough, right? But considering the Crown Tower is, an actual tower, and Hadrian actually has no idea how to climb, much to Royce's internal frustration, it's anything but. The book concludes with the completion of the job and the forming of a brotherhood born in literal blood. So, what about the other books in the series? Well, they basically follow the same structure as the Crown Tower. We spend time in the heads of Hadrian and Royce, watching them mature and develop. And honestly, there is real development here, especially from Royce. From Crown Tower, where he's presented to us as a literal murderous backstabber, to Drummondor, where the fear of disappointing the woman he loves, yes. The cynic develops to the point where he can allow himself to love, pushes him to act not out of self-preservation for once in his life. We're also introduced to a side character that has ramifications to the events of the book. In the Crown Tower, it's Gwen Delancey, a pleasure woman working out of the hideous hound. In The Rose and the Thorn is Reuben Hilfred, a young boy in training to be a royal guard. In The Death of Dulgath, it's Sherwood Stowe, a portrait artist. In The Disappearance of Winter's Daughter, it's a recently married newlywed named Genevieve Hargrave. And in Drummondor, it's a dwarf named Gravis. A job is presented to Royce and Hadrian in the first third of each book. In The Rose and the Thorn, the job is regarding the pleasure women of Medford House. In The Death of Dulgath, it's regarding the assassination attempts against a noblewoman. In The Disappearance of Winter's Daughter, it's about locating an abducted noblewoman. And in Drummondor, the job involves them stopping a dwarf from tampering with Drummondor, which are 2 dwarven towers. There is always an unforeseen complication in the mid to late portion of the books that then forces the duo to use some creative problem solving. And in the final act, the two resolve the complication and complete their job. So what's my rating? Well, 3 stars out of 5. Look, there's nothing inherently wrong with the plots across the book so far. The jobs that Riyria are hired to do are unique and have complications that keep things interesting. The side characters are different and serve as a nice detour from the perspectives of Royce and Hadrian. The problem, though, is that it all feels just too predictable. Despite the complications and uniqueness of the jobs, you as a reader know that Riyria is going to get them done. This certainty robs the book of the tension that they tried to build by setting up these seemingly impossible situations. Category 2. World Building. 4 stars out of 5. Sullivan takes the reader on a journey throughout the book so far. We see Verns, Sheridan University, the dark alleys of Medford, the lush fields of Marinon, the medieval streets of Rochelle, and then Sullivan takes us to fancy Las Vegas with Tour del Fur. All the locations feel different, and that's partly because of their populace. Alongside humans, elves and dwarves are sprinkled throughout the locales, and Sullivan uses their appearances to give the reader more insight into their respective histories. For the elves, we get to learn more about their social structure, and with the dwarves, we get to learn more about their pre-human history, calendar, and revolutions. It's enlightening and does a lot to expand on the world first introduced to us with the Riyria revelations. Category 3. The characters. Rating first. 3 stars out of 5. So the main characters throughout the series are as follows. You have Hadrian Blackwater and Royce Melbourne, who the series is all about. But in case you skipped the plot section of my review, they are thieves that make up the duo known as Riyria. Hadrian is a disillusioned warrior, and Royce is a cynical thief. Here's Gwen Delancey, who is a pleasure woman working out of the hideous hound, who is driven by both ambition and prophecy. Reuben Hilfred, who is a boy training to become a royal guard. He's being raised by just his father because his mother passed away. There's Sherwood Stowe, who's a portrait artist charged with painting Lady Dugat. There's Genevieve Hargrave, who's a recently married noblewoman in Rochelle. And finally, we have Gravis, a dwarf whose whole life centers around Drummador. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Firstly, Royce and Hadrian are great characters. Their character development has been well done throughout the series so far. The problem, though, is the other characters. They're not bad per se, but some of them feel like throwaways. I'm looking at you, Sherwood and Genevieve. And in the case of Gwen, I feel like she took a step back from her introduction in book 1. We get introduced to her as a fighter willing to risk it all for those close to her, and that read great. But then I felt like she devolved from that to just being a romantic interest for one of the main characters. That, unfortunately, did not read so great. Category 4. The magic system. 3 stars out of 5. Magic just doesn't play a large part in the series. But what we do get is fine. We get to learn a little bit about spiritual possession in book 3, golems in book 4, and old primordial beings. Well, at least I think that's what they are in book 5. The mechanics behind the spiritual possession and golems are fine, and they serve as plot devices, much to the annoyance of Riyria. I thought this was a nice touch, actually, to be honest. Still, there's nothing groundbreaking here or complex, so I think 3 stars out of 5 is appropriate. Category 5. The writing. 3 stars out of 5. Sullivan's prose is a joy to read. He doesn't really waste time with nonsense. Characters need to get to point A from point B. Cool, they're there in the next chapter. Then there's the action. There is a lot of fighting throughout this series so far, and Sullivan manages it well without bogging down the reader with flowery descriptions. It's direct and to the point. Then there's the climbing descriptions. I swear, the man must be a rock climber or something, since he does a crazy good job explaining the nuances of climbing. The problem I have, though, is the secondary characters, specifically Gwen. Again, I just feel like she should have been more than what she is in book 5 based on book 1. Then there's also the formulaic plot. I feel like it hurts the series as a whole because it just kills the tension. Sullivan creates these unique plots and intricacies, but there's never a feeling of failure, and I think the series suffers because of that. Category 6. Enjoyment. This one is really tough because it comes down to preference. If you're someone that likes prequel series where you already know the destination but are interested in the journey, then this is probably 4 stars out of 5 for you. But if you're someone that enjoys the journey and wants to guess the destination, then this is probably 2 stars out of 5 for you. Unfortunately, I'm in the 2 stars out of 5 category. Look, I don't dislike the series so far at all. Hell, there are so many times it made me smile or shake my head. The problem is that I know what happens because I read the Riyria revelations already. I know the outcomes of all their jobs already since some of the characters involved were in the Riyria Revelations. Hell, the Riyria Revelations flat out spoiled the Crown Tower job. And this just killed the tensions of the series for me. Combine that with the formulaic plots and the subpar secondary characters, and I just didn't find myself enjoying it as much as the Riyria Revelations. So that's my review of the Riyria Chronicles series books 1 to 5. I hope it helped you decide whether it's a series you want to invest in or not. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. And with that, I'll see you all in the next one.